Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Tanner's Favorite Things. I'm Tanner Knight, and today we have an awesome guitar to take a look at. This is a 1983 Peavey Mystic. So if you watch this channel, you'll know that I love Peavey guitars, especially the ones from the 80s, and this one fits right in that category, 1983. By 1983, they've been producing guitars for about 5 years now. Their very first guitar that they designed was a Chip Jones designed T60. I released a couple videos on that, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, so feel free to check out those. But by 1983, the shredder guitar movement was in full effect. Eddie Van Halen came on the scene in the late 70s, 77, 78, and really kind of defined that shredder style of playing. And by 81, 82, into 83, hair metal was pretty much topping the charts. People wanted pointy guitars, they wanted high output humbuckers, in some cases an HSH configuration humbucker, single humbucker, but in most cases you'll find at least one humbucker there. And of course with the shredder guitar you want super access to these higher frets, and we have 23 frets on this neck instead of the standard 22 that Peavey is known for speccing on their US made guitars. So medium frets, I wouldn't call them medium jumbo or anything like that, they're just regular old medium. And I couldn't find a fretboard radius on this guitar, but it looks very flat. I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like a 14 or 15 or 16 inch radius maybe. Just very flat, very shreddy for access up here. Obviously that's not my style of playing, so you're not going to get much of that from me, but I love this guitar just the same. So one thing that I think Peavey did really well is to just stick what they knew, and this neck here, this is a variation of the same neck that you'll find on that T60, the T27, the T15 even, which is a short scale guitar. So what this neck is a bi-laminate hard rock maple neck. And bi-laminate means that it's two pieces of hard rock maple that are quarter sawn and glued together. You can see that seam right here. This one's actually pretty hidden, so you can't see that seam all that well, but I'll get a nice close-up of that for you. But bi-laminate hard rock maple neck where the fretboard is the neck, very similar to how Fender makes their maple necks. They had some variation with neck thickness and some of the specs as far as width, but for the most part, they just built this neck and applied it to all their guitars, with the one variation on this specific one being the 23rd fret. But the headstock is very similar on all of these models, and our branding is very similar. Our string tree right here is this triangle design on all of the 80 Peavey's guitars. And then these tuners are also the standard kind of Clouson style. They do say Peavey Truvox, I think. Yeah, Peavey Truvox is what it actually says on these, but they are a Clouson style with a button style of knob here. Now, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that the major gripe that I have about these Peavey guitars are these tuners. So far, these are some of the more solid tuners that I've ever experienced from this style of Peavey tuners, so that's a good thing. They don't have any slippage, or you don't have to really finagle with them too badly. They're pretty set and forget, and they stay in tune for at least, I don't know, half an hour or so before you need to think about them. Also, you'll find these same exact dials on all of the Peavey guitars of the 80s. These are the kind of aluminum knobs here. They're valued at about 20 bucks a piece. If you buy just a set of these knobs, you could spend 60 bucks easily on just some knobs for these Peavey guitars. So those are original, they're there, and they're pretty much standard across their line of guitars. Next thing I want to talk about is the bridge. Now, you would expect to find a tremolo on this unit, something like a Kaler or a Floyd Rose. Peavey even made their own version of the Floyd Rose, and you would expect to find those on these Peavey guitars of the 80s, especially the shredder style. But this is basically a stop tail piece with a string through design. So you can see that all of these ferrules right there are where the strings are coming through the body, and then they go up and get individual saddles. So this is a really nice bridge, very heavy, very solid, but it's not a tremolo system. So a lot of people might think, well, why would you have a pointy guitar without a tremolo system? I guess that's a different debate for a different time, but me personally, I'm super glad that we don't have to worry about that, because I think it always affects the tuning in a negative way. So, stop tail bridge, all original. But that's about where the original items on this guitar end. Being a guitar that's almost 40 years old, you can imagine it's been loved and played by its previous owner or owners, and over the years, some modifications have taken place. Most notably, these humbucker pickups. These are DiMarzio zebra-style humbucking pickups, and they're really great pickups. People lust after these zebra-style pickups, and I think they sound great in this guitar. But I've been tasked with restoring this guitar back to its original state. So we're going to go ahead and swap out these aftermarket humbuckers and put the original Blade-style pickups back in here with all the original pots. Speaking of pots, all of that has been swapped out with the pickups. So these potentiometers are all newer versions of the potentiometers. I have all the original with the pickups, so we'll tear into that in a second. But first I wanted to plug this thing in, see how it sounds in its current configuration, and give us a benchmark to compare against when we get those original pickups in there. But before we do that, also this three-way toggle has been replaced. We have the jack input, which has been replaced with kind of a telly style, that input. So by replacing this telly style with the original barrel style input, I think there's going to be some screw holes that we'll have to deal with, but we'll take a look when we get there. But the most important takeaway here is we have an awesome 80s US made shredder guitar. Let's take a look at the back real quick. This is where things get a little dicey. The previous owner scratched, I assume, their initials here, DAL. I don't know what those initials stand for, but they're there, and they're very deep into the finish, all the way into the wood. So you can't really do much about that unless you were to refinish this guitar entirely. I think it kind of adds to the character of this guitar. Keep in mind this is a shred machine, so a little bit of hardcore guitar labeling is to be expected. So DAL, that's there, but the good news is that you'll never mistake this guitar for any other Red Mystic out there. So if this guitar were to get stolen, that's a pretty good indicator of this specific guitar. Bolt-on neck, of course, 4-bolt with the tilt system right here. This hole is for the neck tilt. I think it looks pretty dang straight. Probably doesn't need any additional tweaking or anything like that. And the truss rod, I think, doesn't need to be touched at all. Maybe a tiny little twist and bow, but I don't think that it affects the playability at all. All right, let's hear this guitar through the 5150 being plugged into this Fryette 4x12 cab with 4 Celestion V30 speakers. We're capturing the sound with 2 microphones today. In channel 1, we have the Sennheiser E906, which is a dynamic mic capturing the bottom right or your left speaker. And then we have a condenser microphone, the Audio-Technica AT4033 SE condenser room mic, which is about a foot in front of the lower left-hand, your right-hand speaker. Those mics are being fed into my Focusrite Scarlett 18i20 interface and being captured by the DAW. So those are some really nice usable clean tones, but we're here for the dirt, so let's just go straight to the metal zone and hear what this thing sounds like. Man, it's almost a shame to take these pickups out of here. They sound absolutely great. Thick and rich, perfect humbucker tones, great for 80s hair metal. However, the main intent of this video is to return this guitar back to as original to spec as I possibly can. So let's go ahead and dig into that and see what we got under the hood. Alright, so the very first thing that I want to do is remove this cover plate here and see what's behind door number 1. Alright, so I was told from the get-go that this guitar had upgraded pots and humbucker pickups. So what we have here is actually a very nice looking job. So we have really big bumblebee capacitors and a pretty clean solder job. There's a little mess right here, but overall not the end of the world. So the owner of this guitar wants to restore this back to as close to stock as possible. And we have the original pots, we have the original capacitors, we have the original switch, but it's a little janky, so we might not get to the switch, but we have the original barrel style. It looks like actually this got routed out too, so I don't think we can use the original barrel jack that came with this guitar. We'll have to take a look at that. So we're gonna have to tear this thing completely apart. So let's go ahead and get these strings off of here. What I do like about these Peavey tuners is that you see the string gets bedded into the actual tuner and then winds around, so you don't have the potential to get poked by your string. So that's kind of nice, a nice little design feature. But overall, I find these Peavey Clouson style TrueVox tuners to be a little weak. We don't have to take this bridge off, but let's go ahead and do it, see what we got underneath just for kicks. I can say that Peavey uses way burlier screws than both Fender and Gibson as far as their componentry goes. Their pickguard screws, these screws that hold down the bridge, they are way bigger than they need to be. All right, these strings, like I said, are string through, so I'm just gonna kind of leave this here and expose what you can see. So they do paint over this route, they route it out and then paint over it, so that's pretty standard. You can see the ground wire there. So let's next take a look at these pickups. These pickup rings are not the original ones either. But the good news is that the original pickups do have what we need around them as well. So I'll show you those in a second. So these screws look different than these, so I'm going to keep these all separate. We'll put pickup screws up here, bridge screws back here, and we can see our pickup is mobile. So nice route. Man, these look really good. Not much to that route, just straight down and the shape of the pickup, but there you go. DiMarzio pickup, made in USA. This is the DP163BC. We have another DiMarzio that looks like it's been a little shortened here, but got plenty of cable there that we can work with. So these are coming out anyway, but really nice humbucking pickups. These are very sought after. You can usually pick these up for, I don't know, 125, 150 bucks a piece. So, I don't know, maybe more than the rest of this guitar is worth in total. But hey, someone loved this guitar and this was the pickup that they chose. And now it's our job to return it back to stock. These Peavey knobs have a little set screw. Let's see if my screwdriver is small enough to get it. Or is it an Allen wrench? Let me try the Phillips head. This one's a little finicky. Seems like it's either all the way in there or stripped. There, I think I got it. Yeah, it's just a little stripped, so gotta be careful about that one. And then this one, kind of the same. Let me try. I know a socket wrench is a better tool for the job, but I just happen to have this one sitting right there. Yep, definitely won't be able to use that barrel jack that originally came with it. This thing was routed out for this specific jack. Let me see if I can do this. You can see how this is actually routed for this Telecaster style jack input. Okay, so now our task is to loosen all of these wires so that we can get rid of the old components. So let's start here. Let's have my soldering iron. I'm being very careful not to touch the body of the guitar. This one's very close. Alright, the input jack is off here and probably needs a little bit of cleanup. This is our positive, this is our negative. Okay, next we have to disconnect our humbucker pickups from all of these potentiometers and switches. Guess I'll do this one first. Okay, making progress now from the pots. This is a lot of solder here, so it might take a second to heat all this up. Ooh, this wire's getting hot. This is quite the mess of solder down here. I'm also being very careful not to touch these capacitors with this hot soldering iron. Okay, there's one. Okay, got that one. Looks like we've got maybe just one more ground wire here. Okay, I think that did it. Actually, we got one more connected here. Alright, let's flip it over, see if we can get these humbuckers out of here. There's one. And there is two. While I've got this guitar apart, I might as well go ahead and clean it. Today I'm going to be using Dunlop's Formula 65 guitar polishing cleaner. This is a product you'll recognize if you've ever watched any of my teardowns. Huh, that's interesting. Looks like that truss rod cover was just taped on. So that's something we'll have to replace. Alright, let's go ahead and clean this neck and headstock up first. Peavey uses a polyurethane for their wood treatment, and it provides a really hard yet really pleasing finish for all of the wooden parts of the guitar. A little dirty here. Alright, on to the body. So in addition to the Mystic, Peavey also has a very similar guitar to this called the Mantis. And it's not quite as curvy and curvaceous, but it is really pointy, and it looks more like an Explorer or E-type of guitar. This is kind of its own thing, but it's definitely in the pointy guitar realm and is geared towards the metal guy, the shredder. Alright, let's take a look at the original components and figure out how we're going to make this thing work again. Alright, so let's take a look at the original pickups and original potentiometers and switch and input jack here. Let's first take a look at the pickups. These are the original dual blade style humbucking pickups that Peavey developed and were really famous for in the 80s. And these are really good sounding pickups, so you'll hear in a moment. But what we have on the back is pretty much nothing distinguishing these two from one another. Just Peavey Electronic Corp, this orange dot here. And the only way to distinguish which one is which is based on the length of the cable. So this is our bridge, this is our neck. Otherwise, the original input jack is this barrel style, which is cool, but we noticed that it was routed out for this Telecaster style barrel, so obviously that's not the same diameter, so that's not going to work. So we'll just put this off to the side here. That's not going to work. We're going to use this one. Otherwise, we have 3 potentiometers, or looks like 4 potentiometers. I don't know where this extra one came from, but we have 3 here, and this one actually looks like one of these. So that's just an extra, maybe from a Gibson or something, but that's from the non-original set. These 3 are the original with the original switch tip. And take a look at this. That really isn't usable, so there's nothing holding this back. It's just going to be in that one position. So I may open this up, take a look at it, see if I can get to it, but it looks like it's pretty enclosed. So maybe we ditch the original switch and go with the one that we know works. We'll see. Either way, let's do a little cleanup here and get these ready for installation. All right, so I've taken this switch out, and I've noticed that we have a ring on here that acts as the ground. The ground used to be on the back here, but instead we're going to just put this right through here and install these 2 pots and this one and the switch tip all at once. So let's go ahead and do that. Each one of these pots has a washer on the inside and the outside that we're going to maintain. Looks like some of them were on the original, so we'll just keep on using those. Okay, I'm just going to get this one tight because these other ones, they look like I might have to pull them out to get the solder in. So let's just put some washers on here loosely and just make it so we can turn this guitar back over. And I'm not even going to put this one on here because that one is going to be the hardest to get. So I'm going to need that one completely free. Let's put the jack in there now, or at least get it close. I hope that these wires will allow me to solder this outside. So we'll just keep it there. Let's flip this thing over and see about getting these humbuckers wired through here. So like I said, longer cord for neck and shorter cord for bridge. So let's go ahead and feed this through our cavity. Looks like we're just at the end here, so let's go ahead and pull these cables through without pulling that existing ground. So there's one. And that sits just like so. Next comes the neck. And we have our second set of wires coming through. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and screw these humbuckers down because they're kind of flopping around, and there's nothing else that I'll need as far as those pockets there. So we'll just go ahead and screw these down. All right, now all that's left is soldering this thing up.
Several hours later.
All right, I think that's about as good as I can do. So let's go ahead and get these screws back in here and get this thing reassembled. Alright, so it didn't go 100% smoothly, but this guitar is ready to rock and roll with the original pickups and the original pots. I'll be the first to admit that I don't wire up the pickups enough to be considered an expert. Luckily, most guitar manufacturers will provide you with the wiring schematic just free online if you just Google that year and model of guitar. Sometimes it may be a range of years, but either way, the wiring is usually pretty much the same. In this case, I was able to Google Peavey wiring, and I found the Peavey Mystic wiring that is shared amongst a few different guitars. So that PDF I was able to find online and solder my way to success. At first I missed a ground wire. I had something backwards based on the schematic in my brain, but I eventually found that error and wired it up so that it works properly. The one thing that I can say is that it does have a little bit more hum than I would have expected out of these Peavey Blade-style pickups. I have a little bit of experience with these, mostly the single coil variant, but in most cases, in my experience, they're dead quiet and you can hear just kind of an ambient hum. It's not terrible, and it gets a little worse if you touch the strings or metal parts of the guitar. So I think there might be a little problem with the grounding. I'm not exactly 100% sure, and I'm not a luthier and capable of diagnosing it further than what I've already done. So the good news is these pickups really do sound good. Clean for you. Right now we're in the bridge. Let's go ahead and hear the neck. Does get warmer in the neck, as you might expect. Just for kicks, here's the middle position. Very usable sounds in all three positions. So one thing Peavey was known for was pretty inventive electronics, and this guitar is evidence to that. We have two humbucker pickups, but when they're at 10, they're in single coil mode, and they just kick into the humbucking mode when you bump them down to 7 on the tone dial. So we have our volume all the way up, and then our tone is at 10 right now, so that's single coil. So let's go into the bridge and go ahead and wind that tone down. When we get to the 7, that's when it darkens up, gets a little thicker. That's when it engages the true humbucker in this pickup. Once you go beyond 7, at this point, it becomes a regular tone dial. And muffles the sound as you would expect a tone dial to. I wound it up to 7. All the way to 10 to kick it back into the single coil. Let's hear that on the neck as well. We're all the way at 10 on our tone dial. We wind it to changes the sound significantly in the much beefier. So these are the Peavey electronics, and they're pretty famous for these electronics. I don't know, I really like them. I think that it's a novel way to get a lot of different tonal possibilities into one guitar. Is the guitar aesthetically pleasing? I think that that's up to you as the player and your judgment. To me, I think it's really cool. I don't know if I would just walk out on stage with this without really being able to shred, as I currently can't do that, so I would look like a fool if I were just playing this guitar on stage. So you really got to have the right attitude to play this guitar and match its eccentric flair, we'll say. Alright, let's go ahead and hear some dirt, and once we add the metal zone, all of these controls kind of go out the window and you get one kind of homogeneous meaty sound. Let's go ahead and make sure we're in the bridge and engage the metal zone. 7, so we should have a humbucker. Let's give it some volume and hear what she sounds like. So that metal zone is probably a little bit much for these pickups. I don't know what the magic combination is, but something tells me this 5150 is a bit much for these pickups. I think the orange would be a better combo, but unfortunately I'm actually out of time with this guitar. This guitar actually belongs to a friend of mine who is selling this guitar right after I do this video. So hopefully this video will go to educate anyone interested in this video about what this guitar is. A funny story, this guitar was sold locally here in Salt Lake City by the longtime owner of it, and it was posted on my local Craigslist. It's called KSL. It's basically the local classified that everyone trusts here in Salt Lake City. And I was, I think, the second person to contact the seller right after my friend who ended up buying this guitar. And I didn't obviously get it. He was able to get it, but then once I saw it listed on Reverb, I was like, hey, that's a guitar, and that's my friend John. So I reached out to John and said, hey, let me do a video of this thing. And he said, well, funny you mention it. If you can put the original pickups and pots in here, then you can go ahead and do a video. So that was the whole intention here. So hopefully this will help this guitar find a new home, and hopefully this video will educate you about its existence. I love the Peavey guitars, and I've kind of made it my quest to document every single model, especially the ones from the 80s. And this one, 1983 shred machine with slight modifications. Most notably, the input jack and the switch are upgraded just because I just couldn't get the original ones to work out. Everything else is 100% stock now, and it sounds really great. So this Mystic was really high on my list for Peavey guitars that I wanted to get on this channel. If you're wondering, number 2 on that list is the Peavey Mantis, and they have a couple different variations of the Mantis. So I hope to grab one of those. It's a little bit pointier than this one, closer to an Explorer style guitar, or maybe the smaller Explorer that Gibson made for the guy from the Scorpions. Either way, this is a super cool guitar. Glad I was able to get my hands on it, even for just a little bit. And if you do want to be the next owner of this guitar, I'll be sure to put the Reverb link in the description to this video below. So, thanks for watching. If you have any specific Peavey guitars that you'd like me to cover, I'd love to hear from you and hear what you have to say. If you like this content, feel free to like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.